All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake and the Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition. We've actually seen what both of these things are going to be, so we're going to be talking about that. Also, we have Monster Hunter coming out on Friday for the PS4. It's a big deal. There's a lot of hype around that. It looks like it's going to be a pretty good game, so we're going to talk about that. In addition, one of our listeners, I think his name's pronounced Leon. Leon, if I'm saying it wrong, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to correct that. But he asked if we've played the Dissidia Demo, and I haven't played it, but Eric's played it and he has some thoughts on that. So Leon was just wanting to know our impressions, and so we are going to talk about that. But before we get started, I just want to say that I apologize. This week is going to be audio only, and that's primarily because I've had a couple of things pop up that were unexpected, and just editing the video can take quite a bit of time, adding in screenshots and game footage and just having to export in Adobe Premiere. It takes a lot of time, and I love doing that stuff, but I just have so many things that just popped up that I don't think that I would be able to get this video out to you all by Tuesday. I think it would probably be more like Thursday or Friday, and I don't want to put it out that late. So I just want to get it to you all on time. And then next week on Tuesday, we will be back to video. But if you are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe to the audio only version. If you want to, listen in the car or maybe at the gym or whatever the case may be, you do have that option. I will put audio links in the description of the YouTube video. And, if you're listening to this on iTunes, you can find the YouTube version of this and subscribe there as well, which we'd really appreciate. But other than that, let's go ahead and get into this podcast episode. This week, I've primarily been trying to blast through Secret of Mana because I told myself that I wanted to replay this game before we did a discussion about it. And also, there's some other games that I wanted to get really dive into. And I just feel like I already told myself I'm going to replay this game. So I'm like, okay, I got to sit down and do it. So that's what I've been doing this week. I know, Eric, you said you've been busy pretty much, but you've been passing time with, what was it again?
I play a little Ocarina of Time, but I've been playing the Monster Hunter beta also. I tried the different modes and I tried out different weapons and such. So that took a lot of my time also. But yeah, I kind of just stuck to a classic this weekend because I beat the other stuff that I already talked about. So I was like, a nice little relaxing game till Lost Sphere comes out on Tuesday.
Very cool. So
Ocarina of Time is the highest rated game ever. So, yes, it's good.
So would you rate Ocarina of Time over Final Fantasy 9? Because Final Fantasy 9 is like slightly below it, right?
That's apples to oranges. I'm not sure if I can compare the two. I mean, in the action adventure game, Ocarina of Time reaches it set the standard for it. So. Link to the Past is still my favorite Zelda of all time, but Ocarina of Time is also a nostalgic road trip for me. That is a they put the legend in legendary.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to put you on the spot because I know you really like Final Fantasy 9 as well, and I know that one's highly rated, so I was just trying to give you a hard time.
Yeah, but I still like Chrono Trigger more than that, so.
Well, there we go, and I don't blame you. So, very cool. So anyways, I guess since you brought up Monster Hunter, do you want to just talk about that a little bit? You said it's coming out on Friday. It's kind of a big deal because it's coming out on the PS4, and primarily in the past, it has not been a really like a console game, right? So that's pretty much what I've seen a lot of the hype being.
Yeah, it originated as a console game, Monster Hunter on the PS2, but when they decided to make it a PSP game is when it really started shooting off, because the Japanese are very much about the handhelds as compared to the console. And it was like the perfect handheld experience for them, especially the multiplayer aspect of it. And they got really big, and they converted to the 3DS down the line in the years when the 3DS became the more popular system to put the games on, and it could graphically work just as well as it did on the PSP. So they converted to that. But this is like the first time since, I believe, the Wii U Monster Hunter 3 that they have made a console version. And like, this one's not just like taking the previous assets and like making new stuff out of it. They just, from the ground up, made a new Monster Hunter game. And it may have some familiar mechanics to it, but like how they do everything is improved. It's, they have a seamless map instead of like it done into sections. It has, like new weapons to play with, these incredible looking monsters that look terrifying to take down. It has a really cool looking story mode that's going to be really good for people who prefer the single player experience. And it looks like it's a decent story too. It doesn't look like just throw something in there. It might be, but the presentation for it is really good.
A little bit higher. Yeah, from what I've seen that people have actually gotten their hands on it for at least a little bit, they said that compared to previous versions of the game, this one is very much more for the masses. Not to say that like that's a bad thing, but they've taken some of the criticism that's kind of filtered out other players from getting into the game. Maybe it just seemed cumbersome at the beginning. In the past, it seems like they've like really put some quality of life things in there that have made it more appealing to more people. I don't know. That's at least from one review I saw. So
yeah, you are right about that. They added a couple little systems, and it's not like it's really from what I see, what they did, they lowered the gap between beginner and intermediate players because they use certain systems like the fireflies to help you track down a monster. But I would still say the gap between intermediate and expert is still about the same. Like, or a better way to put it is, it's much easier to get into the game now than it is before. Because the previous Monster Hunter games, I will admit, are a little intimidating when you first play them. I know I was intimidated when I first played them on the PSP, but like this one, like they really ease you in. Like the tutorials are there, and I believe there is an option to turn off the tutorials if like you're a veteran. It's like, I don't need this. I can figure out the smaller changes the game has done. But like, if you're a beginner, it's very accessible, and I applaud them for being able to pull that off.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And I mean, it seems like it's got a lot of hype behind it. So, I think it's going to do really, really well. I'm excited because I've only played the PSP version a little bit. I had a friend that was really into it, and he was trying to get me into it one day. So, you know, he walked me through a couple of things. And I played it for like a couple of days while I was just visiting and everything like that. But I never actually got like hardcore into it like some people did. So I'm kind of excited to play it. I don't know if I'm going to get it immediately when it comes out because there's quite a few games coming out in the next couple of weeks, next month that, yeah, I want to get. Because, well, I want to get Lost Sphere. I want to get Monster Hunter, but then I also want the Secret Mana remake. And then there's also the Final Fantasy 12 PC port that's coming out on February 1st. And that's just me thinking off the top of my head, you know, so I don't know. We'll see. But are you going to pick it up on day one? Or?
Oh, yeah, that's a day one for me. There's other games coming out around the time, but I've decided to keep my focus on Lost Sphere and Monster Hunter World. And there is the new Final Fantasy 14 4.2 patch coming out on January 30th.
Boom. Yeah, you sent me a video of that, and that was pretty sick. It's like Final Fantasy 6 themed.
The new raid coming up, not part of the main story, but the new raid. The previous raid tier focused on Final Fantasy 5 bosses with X Death at the end. This one is going to focus on Final Fantasy 6 bosses with Kefka at the end of it. So if you're a Final Fantasy 6 fan and you've been thinking about wanting to get into Final Fantasy 14, the MMOs, I'm like, well, here's the carrot on the stick for it. I mean, I've seen people like who've never played an MMO before now want to sign up to it just because they're such Final Fantasy 6 fans, and the trailer for this made it very, very appealing.
Yeah, I was watching it, and I was being like, wow, this is like super nostalgic. Now, how long would it take somebody to get to that raid? It would take them quite a while, right?
It'll take a while. I mean, you're going through 3 Final Fantasies to get to the end game right now. I've been playing it since day one, like 1.0 and the 2.0. We're on O series now. And I mean, I've been following it along, so I've always been relevant to Endgame. But if you're a person getting into it for the first time, you're going to have a long trek ahead. But I mean, it's a great trek. It's 3 fantastic stories you're essentially getting on the way to the Endgame, 3 quality Final Fantasy stories. So, you know, there's a free trial. Just Google free trial FF14. You can play for free all you like for however long you like, up to level 35, but then you're capped. And if you want to keep progressing after that, you do have to buy the game and start a subscription. But, you know, for that level 35 range, you are free to test it out and play it out however you please.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. So it's a minimal investment, really. It's not like it's going to be, you're not going to be able to play it for a year and a half. It's definitely in the short term obtainable. So very cool. Awesome. Well, we had our next topic, which basically this week's podcast, a lot of it's going to be relating to stuff we talked about previously, because we were kind of speculating about it, and now we've kind of seen the light a little bit, right?
And we talked about how right I was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so it was speculating. Square Enix said that Final Fantasy VII Remake was going to make an appearance at this deal that had to do with the Final Fantasy franchise 30th anniversary. Is going to be kind of like a closing deal, because it's just, you know, closing the whole anniversary thing off, because we're moving into the, you know, 31st year. And they mentioned that there was going to be some artwork from the Final Fantasy VII Remake, talking about the church in Midgar. And there was some speculation about would we see more than that, whatever the case may be. Well, we only got concept art. Now, we did get a lot more concept art than I thought we would get. So that's kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, no screenshots, no videos. Granted, it was at an art gallery type deal. So I guess it would be kind of strange if you had, that'd be a kind of a strange place to unleash like a Final Fantasy VII trailer at like this art gallery, because it would probably just be packed with people who don't care about art.
I wouldn't leave it beyond Square Enix, but they didn't do it.
Yeah. So, but they did post quite a few, quite a bit of concept art. At the beginning of the year, we got just that one concept art with Cloud and Sephiroth. So this year we actually got one with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, right?
Big,
and then we also got a bunch of different like concept art of Midgar. I have some thoughts about this, but I think you kind of had something you wanted to say about it. So what were you thinking?
No, not much to say. I mean, it's what I expected, and they're just going to show off a few things. And, you know, when Square Enix really does want to show something off, they make a big deal about it. Like, you know, that whole thing with Final Fantasy 15 they did, saying it was going to be out in September. Then like a month later, you have Tabata with like the most apologetic looking stance ever, be like, I am so sorry, but we need 2 more months on this. You know, same thing.
Incorrect, Tabata. You need 2 more years on this.
2 more years. Yeah, exactly. But for what it was, they didn't really hype it to say it would be anything. So, you know, I'm not going to really fault Square Enix for anything. They pretty much said exactly what it was going to be. And, I mean, for what it is, the art's nice. It's nice art. If Square Enix is good at doing anything, it's really nice design. I mean, the stuff looks beautiful. Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse look well designed.
Yeah, but I like how they're like, oh, like, let's just give this giant concept art of these characters like nobody really cares about. You know, like okay, like they're like, yeah, that was like good part of the intro of the game. You know, and those characters are in the game for like a couple hours, but dude, you know, and no one wants, like, everyone was like hoping they were going to show like a screenshot of like, of like Barrett or Vincent or even more of Cloud or Aerith, like, because of the church.
Yeah, but I kind of hope that in the FF7 remake, since they said they're going to greatly rewrite it to meet the modern standard, or like the meet the type of direction that they want to go for in the setup. I do want them to. It would be pretty cool for them to divulge into more detail about Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse to get to know them more. So it gets a little bit more of emotional impact when you see them die on the tower on their way to them, even if that's even how they're going to go in the remake. Because that's just a little off tangent here, but I really think this is going to be like they're greatly going to rewrite this entire game, like to the point that we only know like the big bullet points of what's going to happen. Like, Eris is going to die, Cloud's going to hand over the black materia, stuff like that. But I think just how everything is going to happen in between it is just going to be like radically different.
It's going to have to be, they're going to have to add a lot, because if you think about it, I mean, even with Aerith dying, like, how are you going to drag that across 2 games? If you have to begin and end her character arc in the same game for it to have impact, to me at least. I mean, you can't like have meaningful interaction with her and then have players wait 3 years for the next game and then kill her. And like, it's not going to be as much interaction, right? But to me, when I play Final Fantasy VII, a lot of the motivation for finishing or getting to a point where the plot develops is really trying to find if there's a way to reverse what happens to her, or if there's a way to enact revenge. I mean, obviously there's other things going on, but I'm not sure if they start her character arc and kill her in the first game, they're going to have to add a lot in the second game to be able to drag this baby out to a third game,
it's going to be a major middle finger if they decide to revive Eris. One thing they did say that they're not going to do is they're not going to take the FF7 compilation into consideration when making this. So in the terms of this particular FF7 remake, the FF7 compilation is non-canon to that. I'm not saying it's not canon to the original FF7, but it so far is not canon to the remake. So those are not being taken into consideration. Gact is non-existent right now, thank goodness. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think they would like revive her, but I mean, just to be able to drag this story out, like there's certain plot elements that I think that would have more impact if you could experience the whole thing in one sitting. And I think that like her character arc with going on the date and everything, and then later she gets killed. Like, I think that all has to happen in one game. So like, it's like what's going to occur in the second game, they're going to have to add quite a bit unless she just dies later in the story.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Like if they go like on the Xeno Saga or dot hack structure where it's like they're connected, but like, well, mostly dot hack. If they're connected, but they're different games, sort of like more like Xenosaga, then it's simply just taking Eris out and rebalance the group to accommodate for what she did. But if they're going with they're not going with a similar system, so it's hard to say or judge yet how the system works, if it could work with or without her if you go into the next game. Because for all we know, they could go do something as crazy as make like the first game and then pull like a 13-2 where it's like it's a different game where they've added new modes and different ways to play.
I could see them adding like DLC like they did with Ignis, where like later you can go back and you can save her or something like that. Or like I could entirely see them doing that, because like with Ignis, like they had it where you could go back and like you could like save him from going blind, So
yeah, they might do something like that. That would be interesting to say.
I think.
What if Eris slightly stepped to the side? What would happen?
Yeah. What if she put on some armor? I mean, I don't know. Or prayed the other way.
Or she turned around and smacked Sephiroth in the face. Like, no!
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things we could have done here, so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this all comes about. I'm really like, I was like trying to like find some more information about this event, see if anybody spoke or anything. And I really think that like E3 this year, like they have to have some kind of information about this game.
I can't imagine that they wouldn't say anything.
Oh, we said that last year, but nothing.
Yeah, but like, yeah.
I mean,
I know,
no, what you said makes complete sense. Just Square Enix doesn't make sense a lot of times. So, yeah, we're fighting with logic, and they're being very illogical.
Yeah, I remember I was like, this time last year, I was totally convinced that this game was coming out like this past Christmas. I was like, dude, Final Fantasy 15. They could have had another year with the game. It could have came out for the 30th anniversary, but they got it out early. Why did they want to get it out early? Because they have Final Fantasy 7 coming out for the 30th anniversary. It's the freaking 20-year anniversary of Final Fantasy. Dude, of Final Fantasy 7. I was so convinced that it was coming out. So, I mean, that's a good point. We were totally convinced that we were going to see something like this past year, but as the year went on, it became more and more clear that it's going to be a while. So, but I don't know, man. Like, I think I saw an interview with, God, let me see if I can get the name here. But it was somebody at Square that said that E3 this year that you were going to hear information about all the Final Fantasies in development. Now, that could have just been them just talking, but I feel like Final Fantasy 7 is a Final Fantasy and it's in development. So unless they're talking about Final Fantasy 7 or Final Fantasy 16, which would be even, I think that would be even bigger news.
I know they'll definitely talk about Kingdom Hearts 3. That will be a given because that is confirmed for 2018. I'm assuming late 2018, but they did confirm Kingdom Hearts 3 2018. So I do very much expect for that to be there at E3. FF7 is 100% possible. They could finally show off a little more about that.
Yeah, see, Hashimoto, Shinji Hashimoto, if that's how you say it. But he's in charge of the Final Fantasy brand. He's the brand manager. I said he's looking forward to providing all fans with an update on all upcoming Final Fantasy games at E3 2018.
Final Fantasy 16 still might be too early. I think it's still on the conceptual stage.
Yeah, I think that what that means is they'll tell us about some DLC. They'll say the Final Fantasy 7 remake is in good form and we're working hard and we're excited to bring you information. And then they'll be like, see, we told you about it. So that doesn't necessarily mean a trailer, but I don't know. I'm still holding out hopes that E3 will get something.
Yeah, if we were to hear something about 16, I think it would be like the Tokyo Game Show, or Square Enix will create their own event for it. Companies have tended to do that recently. Just make their own event.
Yeah, I don't anticipate hearing anything about 16 at all until I would be surprised if even next year if we heard anything, because I don't think they want anything. They have people anticipating Kingdom Hearts. They have people anticipating Final Fantasy 7. Then they have people anticipating all this DLC coming out for 15. The last thing they want is to have a whole nother game where people are just constantly barraging them with questions. I don't know. Maybe they do want that. I don't know.
I think we'll hear more about it.
To me, I wouldn't.
After 15 finally finishes its DLC seasons, which probably sometime in 2000, maybe sometime end of this year, maybe if I'm being optimistic, but I mean, we don't even know how long it'll take 16 to be made, especially as 7.
They'll just show us. They'll just show us the Final Fantasy 16 font. like the freaking title art and have everyone going crazy for 6 months.
Well, thanks. We already know what that looks like. You can already imagine that in their heads. Maybe a nice Yoshitaka Amano design in the back. That won't make sense till we play the game.
Is that a crystal? Is that a car? What is that? Yeah, I can already see it. But yeah. So yeah, it was the thing was not as great as I would have liked it to be, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. We didn't see any $1,000 wine bottles that I have heard about, and we didn't see any Final Fantasy 15 noodle cups or anything crazy like that. It was just, it had a bunch of art, we can, kind of surmise that Jesse and Biggs and all those characters are going to play a bigger role in this game, which we already kind of knew, but I think this kind of puts it in stone that that's going to happen. So
the wine is made from the tears of our fans. It is extra salty.
Yeah, don't buy it. So moving on, we had the Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition trailer come out, and before we got this trailer, there was a lot of speculation about what Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition was going to be. If you remember, we had the ESRB ranking come out for Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, and nobody knew what that was. And it looked like it was pretty much the same stuff that's on Final Fantasy 15, all the stuff to look out for. So it made people speculate that this was going to be like a Game of the Year edition. And since the trailer has dropped, it pretty much is a Game of the Year edition in many respects, in that it lets people spend $50 for the base game and all the content that's come out, all the DLC that's come out to date, and all the free updates and everything like that, all for one game of $50. And this has made some people mad that, like myself, and you included, well, maybe not you to the same extent, because I don't think
not mad.
Actually, well, not mad, just kind of like baffled.
Nah. Typical.
I spent $60 and then $25 on DLC, and now they're adding all these extra features in on top of just giving this DLC to people, and it's going to be $50, or I can spend $20 since I already own it. So the price tag's up to $105 for people that got in early. Now, that doesn't necessarily bother me, because I see people saying, and they are right, that, hey, a lot of other games do this all the time. For example, Elder Scrolls, it just comes to mind. Like, they do this type of crap all the time, right? Like, they come out with the main game, it's full price. If you want it, then you're going to spend full price. Then, a year later, or however long later, they got expansions. You can buy those along the way. They're going to be expensive. If you wait, it will be less expensive. I don't think that that's that crazy, right? However, what I think, for me personally, I don't know what you think, but for me, besides the added features, which are kind of whatever, the only thing I saw in there that I thought should be probably for free is having the access to the boat, like another vehicle. But whatever, like if they want to put that behind a paywall, that's fine. I don't care. But the story content that's going to be in the Royal Edition seems to center around insomnia at the end of the game. And it seems like story content that occurred during the main course of the game that our party was involved in, that just was not in the base game. And like, it seems to me like you're going to see Core. It seems like Core sacrifices himself. You're going to see the Kingsglaive. There's speculation that you could see Luna in the background as like a spirit. You see Noctis giving this big speech, and Insomnia like to retake the city. And it's just like, dude, this is the end of the game. Like this, like people were mad that the last dungeon was just like such like short and like anticlimactic. And now you're going to have all this cool like dungeon and Insomnia and like all this crazy story content with all these characters that we wanted to see that we never got to see. And you're going to put it behind a paywall. And it's like, now I have to pay $20 more to see the actual ending. That's my main thing. Like that story content, I'm sorry, that should be in the main game for free. If you want to put a paywall beyond the boat and everything, like that's fine.
Yeah, that's my sentiments exactly. When people get mad about the price point of Royal Edition, I mean, that's just the name of the business. We've seen this stuff before. Like you said, Elder Scrolls is famous for it. Even Witcher 3 has done it. Like, you can buy, there's like a sale, you can buy like the entire Witcher 3 itself and expansions for only $25 when, like, before people paid so much more for it within a short period of time. I mean, I'm not saying I entirely condone the business, but, that's what it is. And that's just what happens over time. Like most games get cheaper. Like I paid $60 for games over there, but now they're like $5 in the bargain bin somewhere. And, you know, DLC is the same. Over time, it gets old and they just want to, they lower the price to get people interested in it. It just happens. In terms of the Royal Edition content, I entirely agree. It needs to be 100% free. This is such important critical content that this game needed from the get-go. Not about like the boat. No one cares about the boat. I'm talking about the in-game content with Insomnia. Like you said, it has important story content in it. It has important character interaction in it. It has super bosses and like additional in-game stuff that needed to be in there to make that final part of the area feel fulfilling. It is missing. These developers, Tabata himself has said that they regret that they were not able to add stuff in the game that they were not before, and it feels like an incomplete experience for it, which they have gotten countless criticism over, mostly from me. And it's baffling that they are like, oh yeah, here's stuff that should have been clearly in the game, and we want to charge you $20 for it. And like, this is how you apologize to us? You make the content, you make us pay for it, and you put it on there. I mean, I know it's not written on there. Here's our apologies for it. But that's essentially what it is. That's what a lot of this additional content is. That is what the addition to Chapter 13 was. When with Gladius and Ignis and the fixes with Noctis. This was like, we're sorry. We needed more clarification on these scenes. And same with Ravis. We had no idea what happened to him. They're like, we're sorry. We should have put it in. Here it is. But it's baffling where they want to charge us for that. And like you said, it needs to be 100% free. I would be totally okay with it if it was free, but they put $20 on top of it. That is, I mean, I don't have the proper words to put into it without YouTube getting up on us.
Yeah, I mean,
silent there for a second.
Yeah, I know. I had to fix something, and I was kind of letting the air die down after your rant there. Yeah, that's. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing why a lot of people are upset. Honestly, I think it started off that people were like just kind of like they watched the trailer and they're kind of upset that they weren't getting this for free, and then they started factoring it in, and they're like, wait a minute, I spent $105 and they're only going to spend $50. Like that's $55 and the game's still not complete. And we're going to have, more content coming out in 2018. And, now, like what, how much money am I going to have to spend to complete this game? And I saw, a lot of people saying, well, hey, like we said, this is done routinely. But I think now that like the dust is starting to die down, I think people are starting to like get more nuanced with why they're upset. And I totally agree. I think it has a lot to do with that last minute of that trailer. I mean, for all we know, we probably saw all the cutscenes that are in the Royal Edition. I don't know, but it makes it seem like it's this like epic, like Braveheart battle or something. So I don't know, but we know there's going to be a dungeon for Insomnia. We know there's going to be super bosses, like you said. And these characters that we wanted to see this whole time are going to be there. So I'm really, really surprised that we're not going to get that for free. I know Square has come out and said that the $20 figure is not official and that they're still they're still flexible with that price point right now. They're kind of, trying to.
That is true. They did say that. I forgot to mention.
Yeah. So it might not be $20 if you already have everything. However, I have a hard time believing that it's going to be free.
Now, I'm looking it up right now. You can buy a new copy of Final Fantasy 15 on Amazon, rather Xbox One or PlayStation 4 for $20 right now.
That's that's pretty cheap.
I think that might be an on sale thing, but I think the most expensive you're going to find
that's brand new.
Final Fantasy 15 right now is $40. I think it's on sale for $20 now, and its normal price is $40.
It's not used copy.
No, new copy.
Wow, that's actually really cheap.
And I think the season pass is $25. You pay $25 for it.
Yeah, so right now you could get all the free content, the base game, and all the DLC for $45 if you wanted it, right? So the only
technically right now, but I think it'll cost like $65. If it's not on sale, you buy the game for $40 and then the DLC for $25, makes $65, which is a little over the price of the full game. But if the Royal Edition hypothetically was $20, then, you know, it would be a $85 deal. And the Royal Edition would be $50.
Well, if you can get the base game now on sale, so it's a sale, but let's say you get it right now for $20, then you could spend $25 more, get 2017 Season Pass. So you're at $45. But then that wouldn't even make sense because you would still want the bonus content with Insomnia and such in the Royal Edition, which then would cost you an extra $20. So that would put you at $65. So, yeah. And that's with the sale. That's with the sale. Like you said, it's probably going to be more like $40 for the base game. I don't know, man. Like I do feel like $20 is a little steep. I think they should probably cut that back to like 10. I can understand.
I think they should cut that back to free.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does seem like a lot of content, and I could understand them being like, hey, we've had people working on this and everything, but you know, at the very least,
I'm sorry, we didn't release an incomplete game, did we?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
No, we didn't.
They should put $5 or whatever on the freaking $5 on all the like, hey, you get an extra armature or whatever for your the battle system, and like the, you know, using the boat and like all this other stuff that no one cares about. Which, by the way, when they released the results of their voting or whatever, they didn't release the exact results, but they said all these like different like upgrades to the battle system was the least requested feature. and Square decided like, oh, let's just do that. It's probably because it was really easy to do, but whatever. So they did
some weird stuff they do in that game. Like I know some people are like, oh, I can't take my car off road. I don't think anyone ever really cared enough to make a demand out of it. They're like, we've listened to you. We put big ass wheels on these trucks, and now you can, or I'm sorry, on the Regalia. Now you can like off road all you want. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I think like the Chocobos were the point of going off road.
Well, the problem even with that though is, I mean, I personally, I think the criticism behind not being able to go off road was the fact that like driving is so boring in that game. After like the first couple of times you do it, it's just like, if you go anywhere new, it's like, dude, I'm just sitting here for minutes. I'm going past the same stuff I've already seen. There's nothing I can do. And I can't even steer the car, you know? Like, I think that like that kind of like went around that. But yeah, if you start the game off new, you can't even drive off. You can't drive off the road. Even with the update, you have to like, I think you have to beat the game before like Cindy will let you get the off-road vehicle, which is kind of dumb, you know. They have a way of hearing fans, but doing like taking the criticism and the solution being the dumbest possible way you could implement it. Like with the multiple characters you can use, it doesn't actually, like, it's not like you can run around as Gladio. Like you can only switch characters when you're in battle. And then when you switch characters, it's not like the camera shifts to that character so you can be strategic. Like Gladio will just like disappear and then like reappear like he's like jumped and he like landed where you were. And it's just like, why did you do that? Like I wouldn't have even thought of doing that. You know?
I've also heard rumors. I've read around, I've heard people talk about that they're possibly adding in, like when you're at the campfire, you have the option to train with Ariana. You know, the Dragoon of the game. Yeah. And there's speculation leading to that she may become a party member, which they have said before that they may be interested in adding additional party members to like permanently to the group, like Iris, Ariana, Core, characters like that. And it really makes me think that we are truly playing like the alpha or beta of this game, and like we're going to get the actual Final Fantasy 15 by like the end of 2000 or like the very end of this year.
Yeah,
I'm actually somewhat tempted to play through the game again once like everything has come.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I mean, come on, like, because how long is it gonna be before I get another Final Fantasy? So hopefully by the time like all this is done, you know, it'll be a great game. I mean,
I'll play Arandia the full time.
Yeah,
I'll play her full time. She was the best part of that game for me.
Yeah, she's a great character. I mean, it's gonna be interesting too because initially the base game before any of the DLC came out or any of the updates, like if you just went from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, there are people saying like, "Hey, I beat this game in 19 hours." 19 hours, right? Like they weren't side questing, they weren't 100%ing the game. They were just like, it wasn't New Game Plus. It was just, you know, because that New Game Plus when it wasn't even an option when the game came out, that was an update. They just went from the beginning of the game and they're like, "Hey, it's a Final Fantasy. I want to get the story." And they went and beat the whole game. And they said, I saw it several places around 19 hours. They beat that game. It's a shorter game. So then all this DLC comes out for this year, at least the 3 main ones. And those are about 2 to 3 hours each, right? So let's just say 2 hours each, just to be whatever. So there's 3 of them. So that's an extra 6 hours. Now, are we going to get an extra 6 to 8 hours of content this year as well? Because let's say we get 8, let's say we get 6 hours again, right? Now we're at 12 hours of content that wasn't in the game before. So if you could beat the game in 19 hours before, now it's like an additional 12 hours. Now we're like over 30 hours. Like that's actually like a legit like experience. Because, you know, Final Fantasy X, I think you could like, if you just went from beginning to end without doing a lot of side stuff, yeah, I think you could beat that game easily in like the lower 30s. So, I mean, you know, I think it is going to change the experience quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure 15 will be a much better game by the end of the year. But my main complaint, and I've said it in previous episodes before, has always been, it should have been like this before. I mean, I would have taken the delay over what they gave us the first time. I mean, we may have been mad about it. We may have been like, you know, putting up our, you know, getting our torches ready and pitchforks, but I think at the end of the day, I would have understood. Be like, this is your main bread and butter franchise, at least on the Square side of it. Dragon Quest is more the bread and butter in Japan, at least, but worldwide, Final Fantasy is. And to allow it to be released like this, it is like there must have been something at Square Enix where they're like, we have no choice. We have to release it for a deadline. We have a contract. Like, I really want to know, like, the 14 developers came out and talked about what went wrong in 1.0. I really hope one day we get, like, a kind of documentary of, like, what went wrong with 15 before, you know, before it got fixed up or something like that. I would be interested to see that because I don't want to put words in the developer's mouth. I can just only speculate from the outside what could happen, but it's such a mess that it's a fascinating mess.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of people say, or a lot of speculation and, you know, some leaks that a lot of it had to do with the fact that the development team was just worn out from working on this game for so long and they were just mentally drained. And
they had to keep redoing stuff over and over.
Yeah. And like, if that's the case, then I don't know, man. Like maybe you should trade some people out. Like there's like lots of things I feel like you could have done. And I hate to like sit on the sidelines and be one of those people that wasn't there. You know, when this thing was announced, I was a lot younger than I am now. So there's no possible way I could have been on it from the beginning anyways. But, as far as like working on it, you know, it just seems like there's so many different things they could have done. And, I feel like a lot of these excuses we've heard are just going to come out and just be like, yeah, that's just something we said. Like the whole contract thing, that doesn't hold water with me. I mean, how Tabata and his team had a contract with the company they worked for, who was paying for everything, like, and like they like couldn't surpass it. What happened with the last 7 years? Yeah, like you know, it's like, no, this is your product. Like, you can't just make a contract with yourself. I guess they had people that worked there under contract, and they were going to lose all these workers or something. I don't know, But
well, it's a little complicated because you have like contracts with marketing and everything, and you know, I'm sure they have like all these deadlines they have to meet with like fellow companies, like the people that sponsor them. I mean, I'm sure it's a very complicated, to simply delay something is not that easy. I've looked at stuff in the past. I've seen what the process is to get stuff delayed. Like, not only do you have to delay the game, you have to delay all the marketing. And if you have contracts that are already signed for such and such, like, you are put in a corner, like, badly. So I can understand, like, if they openly said that was the case, then, you know, I would understand how 15 got released that way. But it still kind of goes back to my point, like, if they knew they couldn't, like, did they just not be able to project that, like, they would not be able to get the game done in this time? Because all the stuff they're adding now, it's like, this is stuff that takes, like, additional 2 years to make. Like, they must have just really dropped the ball on their projected dates on what they could get it done.
Well, I mean, that's just it too. Like in the past year, they've added so much content, and it's just like, dude, like that's a lot of people. Like, they still have a team of 100 people working on this game, you know. So it's just mind boggling. So, you know, hopefully once all this content comes out and you know, we get the Final Fantasy 15 Royal completed Tabata approved version. Which, who knows, you know.
And I truly hope it is a much better game from it. I really want to tell people one day that, like, well, it was really terrible when it first came out, but they actually fixed it over time. So, you know, it's worth playing now. But right now, I would not recommend it to people at all. I'd say wait till it's done, till it's actually done, then play it. Or you could try the D-Make mobile version that's coming out soon.
Yeah, watch that version be like 1,000 times better, and it took them like 7 months to make.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that'll.
I will try that out though. I've not tried the DLC of 15, but I will try that out. Yeah. I'll let you guys know what I think about it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that about wraps up what we have to say for the Royal Edition. I think, did we have any, we hit the Monster Hunter, we hit, you know, Lost Spheres coming out. We're excited for that.
We had a viewer that was interested in if we played Dissidia or not.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's right. I'm so glad because I almost closed this podcast off. And then, yeah, he was asking about if we played the Dissidia demo. He didn't say what exactly his concerns were, but he said he would be interested in hearing our thoughts on it because he played it and he seemed to have some concerns regarding it, but he didn't specifically say. So I think he's trying to see if maybe we have the same concerns. I haven't played it, but you said you played it, so.
I will say this about the game is that it's pretty looking. But actually,
that's good.
Dissidia first came out on the PSP, way back then, like, I think, like, 2008, 2009. Then the sequel came out in 2010, 2011 for the PSP. And it was a really awesome fighting game. It was a 3D arena game. It was like one-on-one. You had to read the opponent's movements. And each character had their unique set that made sense to the character. Like, it wasn't just like generic fighting moves. Like, Terra was like, had her sword and she was kind of like Red Mage, like she could cast magic and use her sword up close. And then like Bart's, his thing in Final Fantasy V is you could switch your jobs around all the time to meet certain criteria for battle. So, Bart's was the mime job and he could like, copycat abilities from other people. So it had unique stuff and it was really cool. And it had a really complicated story, but it had a fun story. And even if it didn't make much sense, like it was like Kingdom Hearts level, didn't make much sense. Right. And it was fun. I mean, I put a lot of hours into it. Multiplayer, I did play with some people. It wasn't the online multiplayer; it was local multiplayer. So that was a bummer. But when I did get to play with people, it was really fun. But the single player was great too. Now with Dissidia NT, it has little to no relation to the previous two games. they went in a really new direction here. The bravery and HP system are still intact, and some concepts of Dissidia are still there. Like, the basic layout of Dissidia is still there, but they greatly change what you have to do in the game. Instead of it being 1 versus 1, it's 3 versus 3 now. It's like you with 2 supporting allies against an opponent with their 2 allies. And you have to do a lot of field managing this time. Not only do you have to take an opponent down, but you also have to watch out for stuff in the field. And coordinate with the allies you have to take down the other group. And the thing is, with these things, the fights can last like either a minute, or the fights can last like a good amount of time, like 5 to 6 minutes. It's depending on how much you have going on or what the rules are for it. And because of that, it feels like a very different game. And also with that, when I personally played it, I was like, okay, I know this is going to be a new thing. I gotta be open-minded to it. You know, treat it like its own thing. Try to not compare it to the previous one as much as you can. And on that alone, it's a very clunky feeling game. It expects you to know a lot of what's going on in the field, while it's very chaotic feeling out there. Like, I'm sure if you play it enough times, you start seeing the pattern of what goes on during the field and what allies are good to have with you. But it's like I'd rather have just it been a simple fighting game, but now they just put like added all this stuff to it, to the point that like I just wasn't having fun with it. I mean, I understood it to the point that I could play and be competitive with it, but it wasn't fun dealing with all of that. I mean, I was hoping it'd be kind of like a Marvel versus Capcom type of deal where you could like switch between 3 characters, and fight each other that way, but it's not that way. It's a field management game with like fighting mechanics in it.
You think it'll grow on you after a while?
Me personally, no. I've heard some people say they've had fun with the game. Yeah. And this is a game that really needs to keep their demo up. Because people who like the previous Dissidias, I don't think you're going to like this game very much. If you're purely looking for a game that was like the previous 2 Dissidias, you're not going to get it with this one. And from what I heard, there isn't too much of a story on top of this one either. I think there's just enough to make it kind of serviceable for single player, but this is a mostly online multiplayer game. They focus mostly on the multiplayer. So if you're looking for a good single player experience, I don't think you're going to get it with this game.
That's disappointing.
I would also wait a few months and see how it grows before you buy it. See the new characters they add in. The character roster is pretty awesome. Like they put Ramza Beolv in there, and
from Tactics.
Yeah, and Kane Highwind reprises from the sequel to Dissidia in there. That's really cool also. But because aesthetically the game is very pleasing looking. It's got beautiful looking arenas. The characters all look great. They all look nice and modernized. And I mean, graphically it looks beautiful, but gameplay wise, it just felt too much, too overwhelming, especially for fights that last anywhere between a minute and 4 minutes. Yeah. Like, there's way too much it wants you to do in that small given period of time. And because of that, it's not my cup of tea. I can't say it's bad, but I do feel like it's cluttered with the UI, with the gameplay, what you have to do in the objectives of the gameplay, and so much going on because there's 6 people fighting each other. Like 6 characters are in there at once. They're all doing things. And you have a hard time telling what's going on around you sometimes, especially if you're a new player. So I don't know that that person who made the comment, if that's his sentiments exactly, but that's what I got out of it. And I actually decided to not buy the game when it comes out.
That's pretty big.
I am on, yeah. I told myself I will wait a while, see how it develops, how people feel about it in the long run, and then I will make a decision from there. But for now, I'm keeping it on hiatus.
Wow.
I may get Dragon Ball FighterZ, though. That was fun.
There we go, Square. You're going to put out a demo. Make sure it's fun.
Well, I say keep the demo up.
Yeah.
And I heavily encourage people to play the demo before they decide to make a purchase. Do not blindly buy this game, is the best advice I can give you.
Yeah. Well, I just find it strange that they would change it so much if people enjoyed, the previous model. Like, why would you change that? Just tweak it a little bit, make it feel a little fresh, but don't completely throw it out with the kitchen sink. So.
Yeah, honestly, me personally, I wish they just would have converted the PSP Dissidia to the screen and add better online components to it. I mean, because those games are really well done.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here, Square. We're more than willing to give you money. I mean, come on. So.
Mm-hmm. And to note, it was made by Team Ninja, I believe.
So I haven't even been following the development of this. All I know is that NT does not mean anything. Apparently that was just a marketing thing. But so Square is just indirectly in charge of this then.
Yeah, they developed it and Square looked over it. Mechanically wise, it's almost the same as the previous Dissidias. It's more of what's around it now. That's more of the problem.
All right. Well, when's that? Do we have an official release date for that yet?
It's coming out January 30th, so next Tuesday.
All right. Well, I'm going to check out some reviews for that before, I would ever purchase that. But I'm just interested to see if, reviewers are feeling your sentiments as well, at least with this demo. So that'd be cool to look forward to. But other than that, I think that about wraps this episode up. Next week, we're going to have another episode. We still don't know the topics yet. Usually we don't know until either the day prior or the day of. But I'm sure we'll have some new exciting topics to talk about next week. And
try to stay fresh.
Yeah, But if anything happens this week that you think we should talk about, or if you just have an idea that you want us to talk about, just leave a comment in the YouTube links or comments. And make sure you say, hey, bring this up or something of that nature. And we'll be sure to bring it up here and we'll talk about it. But also, I'm currently trying to plow through Secret of Mana. There's various parts of this game that are very frustrating that I forgot about. But I'm going to finish it again for my second time in the books. So
it's a pretty hard game. So,
yeah. So
it does take a little while to beat.
So if you are a Secret of Mana fan, or if you've never played the game, we have the remake coming out soon. So we're going to have a discussion on this game eventually sometime next month. And
February 15th, the remake comes out.
Boom. So we're going to, talk about if the remake was faithful to the original and, all that type of stuff. So if you have any thoughts with the Secret of Mana game itself for the Super Nintendo or the remake, or if you just think the remake looks like garbage, or if you're like me, you hate the voice acting, all sorts of comments and complaints. And if you have any thoughts, that's what we're trying to say here. Leave them in the comments and we will be able to bring them up here and talk about it. So feel free to help us out and come out with some content that you think we should bring up. And we'd really, really appreciate it. But until next week, we'll see you then. Thanks.
All right. See you guys.